Conflicts are always ripe for ghost stories. With all of the tragedies that occur, it's not uncommon for people to have encounters with some restless spirits. World War II was particularly brutal, and with all of the soldiers, prisoners, and civilians who lost their lives, the possibility of the paranormal is not surprising. These creepy stories from World War II will definitely put you on edge. There are plenty of World War II ghost stories and legends, and any have been passed down through generations of families. Some soldiers experienced unexplained phenomena, but some people have seen ghosts of those who fought long after, ghosts still in their uniforms, stuck in time. This list includes everything from missing blimps to a mystery in the Swiss Alps. And of course, the occult. 1. Missing children. This story comes from Reddit user Igloo. Their grandfather was a member of the British Army and was stationed in a remote village in the Swiss Alps during the winter of 1943. The village quickly got snowed in, and all the telephone lines were out. The roads were blocked, and the whole battalion was just stuck in the Swiss Alps for the entire winter. Most of the villagers only spoke German, and most of the soldiers only spoke English. So when the soldiers were out at a local bar one night and a man began yelling, "Where take you, the children?" At them, they were pretty confused. They rounded up a translator and took the man back to the base, where he told them that, since their arrival, several small objects had gone missing. A tarp, some wood, a halberd, which is similar to an axe, and then the children started disappearing. If it had just been one child, they probably would have written it off as a weird or tragic incident. They were, after all, stuck in the mountains, surrounded by snow and wild animals. But 3 kids. Igloo explains that the captain told the villagers that he would continue to look into the matter and that he would begin sending some of his men to patrol the streets each night, looking for whoever or whatever was the culprit behind all the strange disappearances. Later that night, Private Reginald disappeared from the barracks. Disappearing children was one thing, but a grown man? It seemed unlikely that an animal, even a wolf, could have taken down a healthy, full-grown man on its own. Naturally, rumors began to surface that there was some sort of monster living in the mountains that came down at night to feast on the occupants of the village. So they keep doing nightly patrols. One night, the grandfather and a few other soldiers see a person standing outside the windows of a darkened house, peering into it. They shout for the figure to stay put. Instead, it takes off running. They gave chase. Eventually, it jumped into a hidden cave and began targeting them. They returned fire, and when the exchange stopped, they investigated. They found Reginald in the cave, deceased, surrounded by 7 half-eaten children. 2. Japanese cannibals. Toward the end of the conflict, Japanese soldiers in Singapore and New Guinea began eating captured POWs. And it is not because they were starving, they were doing it simply because they could and to reinforce their bonds. Sometimes the prisoners were deceased when the Japanese began to hack off their flesh, but sometimes they were still alive. 3. The Diplomat Hotel. The Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, Philippines, was once a monastery in the early 1900s. During World War II, Japanese soldiers invaded the monastery and beheaded all the clergy and nuns. They turned the building into a sanatorium, and after the conflict, it was converted into a hotel. Guests often reported seeing black figures and a woman in white. They also heard screaming and banging in the middle of the night. The hotel is now abandoned and a prime spot for ghost hunters. 4. The mystery of the L8 blimp. In 1942, a Navy blimp called the L8 took off from Treasure Island in the Bay Area on a submarine spotting mission with a 2-man crew. A few hours later, it came back to land and collided into a house in Daly City. Everything on board was in its proper place. No emergency gear had been used. But the crew was gone. They were never found. 5. Ghosts of Normandy. One father took a trip through France with his family. He wanted to visit Normandy and see a few sights from World War II. His daughter was 7 years old at the time, and he says that she had, at that point, never been exposed to any history about World War II and didn't know what either side's uniforms looked like. After they returned home, things got a little odd. He writes, Over the past year, my daughter has often spoke of things or men that she saw looking at her, pointing guns at her and following her while we were in the bunkers and around the Normandy area. She often described them as crouching down, hiding behind corners, holding guns and looking as if they were very mad. He started asking her questions about what she saw. Here's one conversation he had. "Were you scared?" "Yes, but I knew they weren't trying to hurt me, so I didn't think anything of it, but there were a lot of them. Everywhere I looked, they were moving around like army men do, kind of crawling, but bent over. When we would walk out of a bunker, I would see one in the grass or behind a tree. Then, when I was in the car, I could see them looking at me from behind a fence in a field. Sometimes a lot of them, sometimes only one or two." She also described their uniforms perfectly, camouflage and everything. 6. Ghost planes. After World War II ended, many people saw ghost planes. These fighter aircrafts would appear in the sky, then disappear without a trace. One scary story takes place a year after what occurred at Pearl Harbor. The US Army picked up an incoming plane on their radar. They sent a few pilots out to investigate, and when they came back, the pilots said that they had seen an American combat aircraft, a P-40 to be exact, that looked like it had been through hell. It was pierced with holes, the landing gear was missing, and the pilot was bloody. Then, the plane just went down, dropped right out of the sky. When they went to investigate the site, they found the plane, but no pilot. 7. Man in the attic. In Colmar, France, a young woman experienced something strange in the summer of 1991. Her family had just moved into a new house, and she found a hole in the wall of the attic. Through the hole she could see another room, but as far as she could tell, it had no door. She felt something strange coming from the hole but didn't investigate. Later, she went back with a flashlight and saw something. In our home, a young man sat on the floor, arms crossed and knees to his chest, resembling a colorless 3D shadow. His sudden smile left us bewildered, prompting a quick exit. Despite looking real, the figure moved silently, adding an eerie touch. We dismissed it as not a ghost, but later revelations linked our house to a secret WWII printing office, hinting at hidden stories. The mysterious room beyond wartime secrets might have served as a refuge for those in hiding, leaving a lingering sense of profound tales untold. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to subscribe our channel.